This conference will now be recorded.
All right, man. So what you got?
What's this new Nova laser coming out from what's that other company called? Aeon? Do you see where
Oh,
their
yeah,
lasers are called Novas too?
yeah, Supernova. Yeah, they've got a Nova line. That Supernova is a dual source, and I was
Yeah.
kind of expecting like a Zing, like a like a dual source, like a CO2 RF, and then a fiber, in a gantry package like the Epilog Fusion. You can get it that way, and then the ULS you can too. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's a
Tritec's got one similar as well.
Yeah, but this one is two CO2s. One that's got a glass tube in it for heavy cutting, and then the other, you can flip over onto the RF tube and get that. You can alter the frequency, for instance, of an RF tube, and that can affect the output, and you get a lot more control over the low end. You have control over that, entire power spectrum, and you maintain a beam signature, way down into the, tenths of watts. So you can really dial them in. So that's why they're putting a dual purpose in there. It's kind of the best of both worlds for the engraving and the cutting.
Pretty cool.
So, well, we'll see. It's kind of like getting one of those all-in-one office machines or a TV with a VCR in it. If one of them breaks, what do you do with the rest of it?
Throw it
So,
away.
and then if you got two machines, you can be running both of them, double your ROI potentially. But I mean, it's a neat concept. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Hey, I saw something in I can't find it now. I don't know if it's in the Global Thunder users, but a 63 that Thunder Laser Germany had
Mm-hmm.
that had a lot higher output wattage. I want to say it maybe 250. Looked like it was a more beefed up machine, and it was like a Thunder Laser AI 63 Nova AI 63. It had some letters with, I can't find it now, but was that a special order, like custom machine, or is that something they're doing
I,
separately?
I
You know what I'm
think
talking
that's what.
about?
Yeah, I think they're doing that separately. I believe. I don't think they come out of Thunder China that way. I'm not positive. I could be wrong. But now, Germany's also the one that developed the electronics for the Class One Nova 35 lasers. The extra dead man switches and those extra things. So they were responsible for all of that. Telemetry and that kind of stuff going on in that Class One system. So they're real involved in R&D and innovation, even in their own right. So.
I got you.
I did get word talking about sources. We do have an SPT 60 watt RF source now. I think they'll do it in the 51. They'll of course do it in the 35. It won't fit in a 24. And I don't think they'll outfit the 60 watt on the 63 because that's just too much real estate for that tube. But 60 is the highest RF wattage, RF tube wattage that we've had in the series. So.
And you're going to do it in a Nova.
Absolutely. Yeah, that option's actually been around for a while. It was a 50 watt and a 30 watt option for the Nova 35 and possibly the 51. And that's been around for years from what I understand. We just don't push it a lot because a lot of people go to Epilog if they want RF, but with Odin coming out here now, I think that's a serious step in the right direction, in the RF vertical market. So. All right. Well, it looks like we have some usuals. I see some new people on here. Hey, Jen, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Good, good. So, how far along are you in your journey through the weird world of lasers? Are you looking, or do you have
I
yours yet? Or
I don't have it yet. I ordered at the end of December, Nova 24,
okay,
and I am brand spanking new to all this. So I've watched a couple of these videos that were recorded, so I'm trying to learn.
sure, sure. All right. Well, I'm glad you could make it.
Thanks.
So, all right. Hey, Danny, good to see you. What you
Hey,
got, Jeremy?
I got my filter, my heating and air conditioning man fixed me up a filter,
Oh yeah. Okay.
and his thought of a washable filter is kind of a mesh. Is that thick
Okay.
enough? Is that going to be thick enough to do the job, or do I need more of a cloth or something in there to catch stuff?
Well, that doesn't look like it's going to catch fine stuff. It'd keep you from damaging an impeller with a chunk of wood coming through. But as far as the fine particulates, I don't know how well that. I don't even know what that filter medium is. But it depends on what kind of filtration level you want. Are you trying to eliminate dust? You know what I mean? Are you looking to arrest spark or what exactly? As far as the filtration go, or how many stages of it?
What I had in mind was coming out of the machine with about 4 or 5 feet flex up to the line, and it's going up about 10 feet, and then it's going 70 feet, about 60 some feet, and I've got an inline uh, fan toward the end, and I just want to clean everything out before. I didn't
see.
think it was thick enough either.
I see. I mean, yeah, it'll help, of course. And then if you put a filter medium on there that filters too fine of particulates, then you have to worry about it getting occluded and then restricting your airflow.
Yeah,
Or
killing
having
your
to change it
CFM.
real often. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if what you're trying to do is lengthen the maintenance cycle on your fan, that might do a fine job at that. You know what I mean? Especially
Right.
if that stuff's sticky, it'll start sticking to it, and then it'll just start piling up eventually. So,
Well, he made it so there's 12 by 12 filters, so I can get any grade of filter that I want to go in there.
nice.
And I told him I think somebody brought up Jason maybe about a washable filter or something. That was his idea of a washable filter.
Yeah. Well, definitely that would work. Even if you had more than one slot built in that thing, right?
Yes.
So you could even go with a paper filter, like a pleated filter, and then have that as a pre-filter even.
Yes.
So yeah.
But anyway,
that's a good setup.
It's a good friend that does that and gives it to you.
Gotcha.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You can
the other
probably
thing
sell a
is
few of those things.
trying to understand what you're trying to filter to, because there are a lot of people that run them without a filter at all, right? Brian, I don't think you have a filter on yours, do you? You just
No.
exhausting straight out. I'm exhausting straight out the side there. It all depends on what you're cutting and what you're trying to filter, right? And the speeds and powers you're cutting at, whether you're making a little bit of dust, some smoke, or you're cutting more toxic stuff.
Well, I'm going in with 6-inch and I'm coming out with 8-inch. And with that 12-inch in there, if it does restrict some, it's not going to restrict but so much. Does that
So
make sense?
the longest run of your plenum is 8-inch. Then the longest
Yes.
run. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's an 8-inch inline exhaust fan, and it's got 8 speeds, and it goes up to 800 feet or
Okay.
cubic feet per minute. So I figure if I set it on maybe 5 or 6, that'll be more than what we've been getting out of the one it comes with.
Yeah. Well, that increasing your diameter in that longest part of the run and keeping your exhaust on the outlet side of the plenum definitely helps. So you're going in the right direction. We'll see. That thing might pull it. It might residual. There may be a little bit as that thing spools up. You may notice that a little bit more.
Well,
like
I'm
the
going
extra.
to put another filter in there because I just didn't feel this was adequate.
Sure. Well, I mean, it sure couldn't hurt, and it may be the perfect thing. You'll have to do a little testing, see how quick it gets dirty.
Do you have your fan already, Danny?
The fan that comes with it, no, I've already purchased the fan. I bought it the inline 8.
Yeah.
I
was gonna say you could go set that up, now even without the laser, and set it up and see what your filter does to restrict an airflow, and see if you can notice anything, because I've got the 51 with the 6 coming off of it direct into a 6 to 8 inch reducer right at the fan from 8 inch, and then just like a 4-foot section of 8 inch straight out the side, and what I've noticed, right, is like Brian said, if you don't wait for it to spool up and you go cutting something that generates a lot of smoke real quick, you notice how long it takes to spool up, because it's probably, if you're going on max speed, that fan, I'm assuming you got the AC Infinity Cloudline, did you?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So that's the one I've got, the 8-inch. It probably takes 8 to 10 seconds, once you actually get it to that setting to spool up and start evacuating the smoke. Yeah, you're borderline waiting on it to finish spooling up or stopping. You start generating too much smoke and you look like, wow, it filled up real quick, but then it pulls it out. The other thing that I noticed, outside of the fan and just playing with some of the settings, is if you're taking like your bed space, right, and you stick a piece of wood in the center of it, you're going to go engrave or cut it. If you leave all of the rest of the bed open outside of it, it doesn't pull very good. But if you throw some spare sheets in there to cover the surface area, so you just control maybe like a 2-inch gap around where you're engraving, it'll pull it through there fast, right? Because you want to channel the air instead of pulling the full volume of the machine's air through it. You just control the airflow. And that's something that's given me the best, if smoke evacuation performance out of anything, right? I can run it at half the speed that I was previously without it, or I can double the speed, and it doesn't make much of a difference until you can control the airflow.
Okay. Well, did you wire yours into your machine, or do you have a separate switch for your exhaust fan?
So I've got mine wired to a separate dedicated outlet. So right now, my machine, the only thing that I actually have wired to it electrically is the chiller, right? That it switches on and off. But I run the fan separately, and I actually will go spool the fan up, let it spool up, then I'll go send the file from the laser, right, or from the computer to the laser. That way, while it's sending and starting, right, and the air comes on and stuff automatically, the fan will be spooled up.
All right. The next question I've got is on the air dryer. What kind of air dryer did you use, or do you use one,
I,
Jeremy?
are you talking about for the
Yeah.
exhaust?
Sir,
Are you talking about for the exhaust or for the air assist now?
I've got the air system that comes in to the laser. Didn't you use an air dryer that you wasn't necessarily happy with, or you put something together, Brian?
We put together that external air interface kit. It's basically just a plug and play deal. We just pre-assemble it and get all the parts together for you, to hook up an external compressor. Is that what you're talking about? The regulator dryer in it?
Yes.
I honestly just picked the thing that I can find that's probably the cheapest I can get, or not much more than that. And whatever I can find availability on. I mean, these are like $20 regulators. You can get better, sure. You can get a $100 regulator. You can get a $400 system.
But you don't need it, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
So it's really just standard old air compressor stuff. There's nothing special about it just because it hooks to the Thunder. The basic thing is you just need all the moisture out. You just need that moisture trap, to be able to keep the moisture off the lens is basically what you're after.
And what pressure did you set that at?
The factory's
40,
now
right?
recommended 40 psi input pressure to the machine. And after a lot of research, most people don't run much over that anyway. So there's a point of diminishing returns on how much pressure you do use in most cases anyway. So, it's not, I don't think it'll inhibit what you're doing staying at 40. Now, if you got a real thick, nasty piece of 3/4 inch stuff and you're almost there, crank that sucker up to 60 if you need to and get the job done, then crank it back down. You know what I mean? But
Right.
you don't want a continuous pressure higher than 40 on those solenoids, because those Viton seats can deform because they're pressed against there too tight, and it keeps them compressed. So it can make the valve fail prematurely and leak.
Okay.
Hey, Danny,
Yes.
I'm gonna turn my camera on and show you what I bought from Amazon.
Okay.
I bought the aluminum. It's the aluminum washable filters. They were $42. I bought 2 of them to have one dried and one ready to go when if they were changed. So that's what I
12,
bought.
12 by 12.
Yes, sir.
That's good. I
They're on
appreciate it,
Amazon. They're on Amazon. They're called Trophy Air.
sir. I missed that.
It's
was
a
on
Trophy.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Cool.
Well, that's where I'm at. Oh, and the other thing is I got my notice from Rebecca yesterday that they want my final payment. So that's real positive.
Nice. You're hooked now. You can't get away.
Rebecca's always wanting money, ain't she?
How long a wait, Jeremy, did you have after she requested it for you?
So she requested on a Friday, and then it was delivered to my house the Thursday, a day shy of 3 weeks from the request at my house. So you got
Okay.
2 to 3 weeks. I think she said they request it when it's a week out from the facility in the U.S. And then around 2 weeks after they receive it in the U.S. to get it to you. Now, that being said, I don't know where you're at and what kind of shipping routes are going on right now, but if it's coming through Texas, right, there's a lot of delays on shipping in Texas right now. I don't know if anyone saw that FedEx truck outside of Dallas that decided to try to jump over that pile of cars, but hoping nobody's lasers were in there.
Well, it's coming to North Carolina, so it's got a little trip to make it from the West
Yeah,
Coast.
so it's mine landed on the tracking information. It landed in Los Angeles and then come across and come up through Dallas and then down to the Gulf Coast. But I imagine yours will come right through the center, straight across to North Carolina there. So maybe they'll find some routes around it. Hopefully, it's sorted out and not an issue by the time yours gets there and it's not delayed. But I know a lot of other material was delayed right now. I got 6 shipments between DHL, UPS, and FedEx and the USPS that are all in some stage of disarray or don't know when they're going to get it. And I got one that's been sitting 2 hours from my house for 4 days because got a little bit of snow and they're not used to snow, so it's got everything shut down at the moment.
It's nuts. I linked that Amazon Trophy Air filter in the chat, Danny, if you want to look at the chat. I see a couple of people on here that I'm not sure if I recognize. If anybody's got anything at all, please jump in if you have any questions. Otherwise, we'll just sit here and yap all day about all kinds of stuff.
I will say one thing. Rebecca puts the fear of God in you when she tells you that if you don't pay by a certain date, that you fall to the bottom of the list, and that list goes into the end of May. So, it gets your attention very quickly,
Her job's to get your money, right? Make sure you pay. If not, somebody else will.
Sir?
I did get my T-shirts first.
You got T-shirts?
Yes, sir.
Oh, man. What'd you buy?
I know Brian.
Yeah. I don't even have a shirt.
No, I did get some though. Seriously, got 2 of them.
They're working on their swag department a little bit. We're trying to.
I was gonna make my own.
Yeah, well, that's cool too.
I do printing if you need some shirts made.
Yeah, we're waiting to get a line at Target, of full clothing wear, polo shirts with Thunder on it and stuff like that. So we'll see how that works out.
That's good.
There you go.
But I did talk to Rebecca the other day. She told me that Chinese are working through their holidays now, and they upped everything 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're holding their feet to the fire. We've been talking about the kind of expansion we were looking at seeing. So it's not like it just snuck up on us. They've been preparing for it for a while, but you can definitely tell that we're catching quite a bit more client base. It just keeps growing. It's crazy. So.
Yep.
But like I said, if anybody has anything, feel free to just jump right in. We'll be glad to help. So what about freezing tubes? How many of those did you guys see? Did anybody have a tube freeze? Hopefully not. We've answered probably 4 or 5 things about it. And we do have a US source on SPT tubes, and that's normally what we use. And I've got a document about it. And I've been talking with Light Object there in Sacramento, California, and they're a SPT dealer as well. And normally you have to, on the higher wattage tubes, you have to fill out this form and prove to them that you have a CW5000 series chiller on it and, all of these hoops to jump through. and Marco and Joel were kind enough to work out a waiver for us that's blankets all Thunder customers. So if we don't have a tube and you need one, we can get you the OEM tube from Light Object, and you can skip all the hassle. So we've got information on that. I hope it doesn't become necessary, but unfortunately it has been this past week. So
I got a question on Light Object. Are they the folks that offered the laser that has like the variable depth? So like where you can carve and it'll maintain like a fixed focal distance on different depth objects?
yeah, they're
Have
playing
you
around
have you
with
actually
that.
have you seen that in action? I saw some of their marketing stuff. It looked neat, but I wasn't sure how practical it was,
Well, yeah,
especially
that's
if
the
you're talking
thing.
about tolerances of focal depth, how accurate that is, right?
Right. And they're testing it. I've seen Marco, a couple of videos that he put on it. And yeah, it's more proof of concept, I think, right now than anything. I'm sure it may need some dialing in. It's a neat concept. I don't like all the weight on it. You wouldn't be able to raster real fast unless you had something besides NEMA 23 hybrids on there. But yeah, we'll see. They do some stuff now. It's kind of weird because they sell lasers, but they do more business selling parts, for DIY than anything. And they sell lots of parts. They sell lots of tubes. They've got a TR series tube out that I'm interested in, but I'm not sure if I'm sold on it yet. And it's got the red dot, the beam combiner, and all that's built into the output coupler. So it can never change, it can never get out of alignment, which means theoretically, then you could align that tube.
The red dot, yeah.
But if the red dot fails, then you have a beam combiner, blocking some efficiency there that you can't use. Then you have to go back to using your old beam combiner. And now you have a secondary optic that doesn't even need to be there. Yeah. So, I mean, there's pros and cons, but it's a neat concept. So.
Have you looked at the alignment tool that they've got at American Photronics?
I've got one.
How do you like it?
Well, I don't know yet because
you didn't need to align it.
Well, the first thing I used it for, I had to cut a ring, a metal ring, to make it fit another device that I had. I have a Gravograph LS100 that I was trying to get aligned, and I pressed it in there so that it would be accurate. And now I can't get it out of the sleeve that I made for it. So I can't fit it into the Thunder right this moment. But I haven't found a big enough hammer yet, but I'll get it.
Yeah, I looked at picking up their alignment and possibly their 1.5 inch head, right?
It's a good idea. Now, one thing I have heard people say is when you tighten it down, it's eccentric again. Because of the way most of those clamp with that thumb screw, it actually shifts it a little bit again. And I don't know if there's any truth to that. Like I said, I haven't put it in that type of mount yet, but I will, and we'll see. But I've only seen, I know he sells a ton of them, and I've only seen that maybe 2 or 3 mentions of that. So it can't be anything too terrible, or it'd be all over the place, as many as he's moving.
There you go. That's some APC stuff there, Glenn. I know Chris did a video on House of Lasers on some of the lenses and stuff there.
And I've got a set of their lenses I'm going to critique. I just haven't gotten to it yet. They're SI mirrors, which I don't particularly care for. They're higher reflectivity, but they're also very delicate. And I'm kind of rough on my optics, and a lot of other people are too, and they don't last very long.
I got you.
I'll do a comparison. It won't be exactly fair, just because of the SI versus the MO lens. But I'll see what kind of output we get. But he's got good optics and he knows his stuff, that's for sure.
Yeah, from what I saw and who his clients are, what he does in the military world, he's probably pretty good.
If he can make NASA and the military optics, I think his optics would be good enough for our lasers.
Yeah, exactly, for what we're doing. The other thing that I did see on his heads, it was quite nice, and one of the issues also I don't really like about the Thunder. So I got the 2-inch, the 4-inch, and the high res, the Beam Buddy, right? Mm-hmm. Is his 10.5 millimeter focal with the AAA battery, right? Mm-hmm. That's nice, right? Because then, if you really got down to it, right, you might be able to shim or adjust your IR, your autofocus, and then get it to where that would autofocus if you could get that dialed in right. Because that's one. It's a bit tricky, especially when you're trying to focus in that high res lens, right? That 3 millimeters is quite
Yeah,
tight. If you got a
it
slight
is.
bit of a bow in your wood or something, it's getting mighty close when you start swinging it across there real
Yeah.
fast.
And that head is nice and fat.
Yeah,
It's not forgiving either. So,
no, and it gets dirty quite quick.
mhm. Yeah, those are
But
some of the
it's
drawbacks.
phenomenal. The results are
Yeah.
real nice.
I want to look at some laminar flow heads, nozzles, and also I want to see about using a air curtain in the front. You know, the most simple form that I've seen a few people do, and it's really, really effective, is just take the air hose and just hold it out to the side so it blows under the nozzle from the side, you know, instead of down from the nozzle axially.
Hey, you could probably 3D print you a little
Yeah,
bracket and stick it on there. I did that on my
right.
little War
And I've got
Tour
a piece
Laser
of,
Master
I
diode
got
laser. Yeah,
a little
yep,
piece of
look at
brake line, and you put one of those 1/4 inch
yeah,
tits on it, see, and just squeeze the end down.
squeeze it so it fans it out. Yep.
Yeah, right. Just and stuff like that
So
for
what's the part
engraving.
number on that?
Um,
You ain't got that in the Thunder parts store yet?
no, there's only one employee in the Thunder aftermarket parts department, and he's trying to keep this stuff going. I've got another
Sound like
batch of those other things coming out, and I want to do a pressure kit, a pressure monitor, using that one that's got the trigger, so it'll not, if you want to hook it up that way, so the laser won't fire if there's no air pressure.
okay, and that's
But
like with the digital gauge that monitors
yeah,
the output.
we found them for a good price, and they're SMC. They may be clones, but they're good. I've got one. I've been using it, and it's accurate down to 0.2 psi, which sometimes is what you need when you're engraving, when you're doing some acrylics. Because you
Yeah,
get too low on some of those other ones, the resolution's not there. Doesn't do you any good because you can't get a real good metric out of it anyway. So
yeah, and that's one of the things I've found on repeatability. On hey, I do something, it turns out great, and I go back to do it again, and yep, it
yeah,
was the compressors dropped down and was building pressure
right.
back up, or trying to maintain. Hey, I
Hmm.
want the power the same, the speed the same. You can at least do it in the settings, but without
Right.
actually measuring the output, you never know. Right, a year down the road, you could have some slight degradation in optics and dirtiness. Right, is the other one that
Sure.
affects you every time. So yeah, it's tough to get the exact same duplicate. And even when you go cut your test pattern and go determine, hey, here's my speed and power. I want to get this shade of brown on this engraving, and I go engrave it, and it's darker or lighter.
Hmm. Yeah, it's nuts. So, all right. Well, trying to think if there's anything else. That's what I was going to cover if we had any downtime, was the frozen tubes, and I've got that OEM article. You can just search in there for that. Trying to think if there's anything new.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Probably, I'm guessing nobody's done it, but maybe. Um, my wife's art, I know I've talked about it a bunch of times, but she's pouring paint skins out of acrylic. I know I can cut the acrylic, and there's no hazardous fumes and all that kind of stuff with acrylic paint, but so it's, I mean, probably easier to show you, but it's really thin. It's poured paint skins. So
Okay.
basically, as you can see, it's just this is silicone. I'm not going to cut on the silicone.
So,
I'll pull those
yeah,
paint skins off and put them on a board. But she
like,
wants to cut scales out of it, basically.
okay. So like thin, like fruit roll up thin, or thin like wax paper thin?
Thin, yeah, between fruit roll up and wax paper, yeah.
Okay.
Those are technical units of measure now.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's,
I was like, I know metric, I know the American. This is the toddler unit, right? It's
That's
like
it.
roll up.
yeah, so
I
this
understand.
is, oh, there goes the light.
Okay. So
So
you just want to slice that stuff up, huh?
yes, I mean, basically she wants to make scales out of it. I mean, I'm just guessing going at like 800, 12%. I got the 51, 130, just basically
Well,
just firing, I'm guessing.
you're talking about vectoring, right?
Uh,
You're talking
um,
about actually cutting lines. You're not talking about engraving, right?
not engraving. No, I want to cut. Yeah, I
Okay.
want to
Well,
cut.
you can't ever go 800 doing that kind
No,
of
not
stuff.
cutting it. Yeah.
Okay.
But theoretically, about 500 is max on those things. But it depends on how how much running room you get. The motion planning has to govern the speeds depending on how it has to navigate around certain objects and tight
Curves, yeah.
corners and complex graphics and things like
Yeah,
that. So that's kind of
yeah.
an internal thing. You may have to play with your min power a little bit if those are complex designs.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you could get up 100, 200 mil. You could set it for that, and if it won't go that fast, it won't let it. But of course, you'll probably want to play with the power a little. I wouldn't think it'd take very much to go through that stuff.
Yeah, I
Another
wouldn't.
thing is look at maybe do you have the high res head?
I do.
Look
Yeah,
at
that'd be an
using that
option.
to cut. Right, it works great on cutting paper where you can do
Oh.
it faster and you
Yeah.
get very finite to cut it because you don't need much power to cut it. So you get that
Yeah.
real small beam signature and can cut very accurately and fast with it.
Smaller kerf, less smoke,
Yep.
less waste, all that. Yeah.
And I'm imagining you're going to suggest use like the low air setting or possibly even lower.
If you turn it up too high, it may get underneath that and blow your
Yeah,
work
blow it,
everywhere. The problem you're going to have is with that HR head, like he was talking about, you're going to be 3 millimeters from that stuff. And it's going to be depositing crap all over that thing, and it's going to drag across it and all kinds of stuff if you don't stop and clean that head frequently.
Gotcha.
So that proximity may be an issue because it may drag
Yeah.
some of that stuff back onto it, depending on the texture on the top.
And that's what I was looking at, that 1.5 inch head from American Photronics, is to get something with a little bit closer to the HR head, but not the you can still keep a 10.5 millimeter distance, right? And
Right.
and you got the cone on it, so it's gives you a little bit more flexibility there.
Mhm.
A 10.5 millimeter, because that would really solve a lot right there, I would guess.
Yeah, and the cool thing about theirs is all of their lenses, like the way he builds the lens in the tube, they maintain the same. So his 1.5, his 2, his 2.5, and his 4 all have the same gap.
Right.
And and he does it based on a AAA battery. So you can get that, and you can do the 1.5 and cut very fine dots and stuff, and then you can get the 4 inch to cut, and then you have 10.5 to focus down into thicker material as well.
Yeah. Also remember that no head or no accessory for that Thunder Nova can use the autofocus at this point except the stock 2 inch.
Right.
So if you use another head and if you don't take it out and you go hit your autofocus button, you're going to be dragging your head through your bed like I did.
Yeah, I was going to say, Brian's got some evidence
I got
of that.
war wounds for that. So I'm a big proponent of trying to let people know that when you're done with those non-stock heads, I would remove them and put the stock head back up in its original position just so you don't forget.
Yeah, honestly, I hardly been
get
using
into that habit.
autofocus at all.
Yeah.
I've just noticed that every time I want to do something, I just raise it so I get to millimeters.
And a lot of people, you'll see a lot of people, even on some of the epilogue groups and all that, on the the machines that cost 4 times as much, their autofocus is junk too. Most people who are steady operators prefer manual focus. They know how it works. That's just the way it's easier. And a lot of times it is. But I do like our autofocus system better because, number one, that autofocus array is not just for the autofocus. It's also the Z minimum in stop. Yeah. So it's the safety for the board, for the bed. So it will come up and contact the head. Ideally. And yeah, exactly what Jeremy said. Mostly if you're using the camera, you got to maintain that focal plane with the camera, just like you do how focus matters with the laser lens, it matters with the camera. So if you don't have your surface of your material at the same focal plane every time, your camera is not going to be in alignment. So I'm a religious user of the autofocus so that my camera maintains alignment.
Yeah, and that's one where I noticed, on the 51, it's a bit bigger bed, and so as you get your camera focus, when I threw the Rotoboss in there and had it closer to the front there, so it's away from the autofocus, go in, manually focus, get it set, and then go start laying out some of the artwork on it, and realize, it's actually, when I go to frame it's a good bit off, right? And you go shove it back there, get it to the right height, get it focused, get your camera shot at the right level, and then it cleaned it up a good bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what I've been doing. So I've been doing a lot of real small, quite a few very small items and centering them, and they're they're round items, and some of the words are within 2.5, 3 millimeters away from the edges. So I need it to be very centered. What I've been using is I've been using the mostly on mine. It's just a Y, but you can adjust that Y just a little bit, and so I'll hit the pointer. I don't know exactly what all the tools are called, but the red dot pointer. You hit it on the light burn. You go and I'll pinpoint the very edge of my round item and hit it, and then I'll take my Y and adjust my Y so that's exactly where I want it. And then I'll go to the bottom, make sure it's exactly where I want it. It's there, and it's like 100% perfect like that.
So
And I don't have to worry about.
you've basically memorized registration marks in your artwork, then you move your head to it and then make sure that your work is just in those two spots that you are using for alignment, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, these are round items, so I'll take.
Okay. Oh, so the center.
Yeah, one of
Yeah.
them's 53 millimeters. One of them's
Oh, yeah.
one of them's 63 millimeters. So
Gotcha.
I'll have one of those tool layers at 63 millimeters. I'll put it right over my object and then hit the corners and make sure
Gotcha.
there's no corners, of course, but you know what I mean. On the object, but yeah, and just make sure it's perfect there, and then
Gotcha.
it seems to work really good for me.
hmm
Yeah, you're effectively making you a software jig and just lining it up with the pointer.
Yeah, and hopefully it gets to where I'm just like when you said jig. I mean, that's one of the things I do want to do. Hopefully it gets, if I can get these selling, I'm going to be able to just put 10 or 15 of them in a row, make a couple of registration points so I know where I'm centered, and just run them all at one time.
You could always get a solid piece of wood, some 3/16 or something, push it all the way to the back and all the way to the left, so that you can index it there every time, and just draw an outline in the circles for all of them, and even just place them by
Line
hand.
them up. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Sure.
set your whole piece of wood in there, set them in the circles, and then boom, run your job.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
that would be one way, and you wouldn't have to think about it that way. I used to engrave, and when I did business cards, aluminum business cards, I would engrave a piece of ply with the business card slot or dog tags or stuff like that, so it would sit down in there. But then I got to where I would just etch around the outside of it and just line it up because they wouldn't move around too much. So
Yep, and that was something I was looking at for some of the coasters is, you cut out the wooden coasters, and then your scrap that's there where you cut it out, right? If you make them the same size as your slate coasters, now you have a jig to drop your slate ones into, right?
Yeah.
Or your acrylic and drop them into. So,
So, well, let's see. What time is it? It's 3:36. Well, Jen, do you have any questions or anything on your machine? Are you just kind of hanging out, absorbing everything?
Right now, I'm just absorbing. We built a cart, or just about finished building a cart, and I'm working on ductwork and electrical. And otherwise, I just figured it made sense to get on here and try to learn what I could learn before it gets here.
Sure. All right.
have
Well,
you downloaded Trial of Lightburn yet, Jen?
I love I work with some other programs that are somewhat similar to Lightburn, and I did get on and use it the first time about a week ago, and I think it's phenomenal so far. I really love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's real good. And as you start using it, you will find a few quirks, and so the more you use it, the better. You don't want to start day one, never seen the software before.
What do you guys start with? What do you do for your first project to test?
You have to etch Hello World.
Hello World, okay.
So a couple people got it, right? That's your software coding. Every software routine you've ever written, the first thing you do is write Hello World.
and I deleted Hello Dolly too out of all my WordPress installations, so I'm probably going to be in trouble for all of that. So, yeah.
So Jen, what I would suggest, right, is don't know what you plan project wise, but if you've got, say you want to cut out things in, 1/8 inch plywood, for example, 1/8 inch birch, and you're going to cut out little signs or decor or whatever, right? Is I'd go start with setting you up a PowerScale file, right? And go learn, go learn that, because you can download the files. I shared a link in one of the groups, and I think Brian actually linked it on the site, where it will go generate the file for you, right? Which is great. There's a lot to be said with being able to do it and manipulate it yourself, right? To be able to manually dial in some of your settings as you get new material.
Sure.
But once you get that, right? So if you and that's good for engraving and cutting, because what you want to do, right? Once you find the right setting, right? I can cut 1/8" Baltic birch plywood fast with no char. I can wipe it with a white cloth at the end, and there's no residue on it. Can cut it fast and clean, but it took a little bit of playing with to get there, right? And once you get that, right? So instead of going and cutting you out a cute little design that you're going to mess up, right? This is something nobody tells you, is you're going to go mess some things up because you don't know what you're doing yet, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
you're going to go, yep. So you're going to go mess up some wood, or you're going to go learn how to use your laser with some wood. So you're going to go engrave some things, cut some things, right? You're going to make some mistakes. Don't go take a expensive piece of family heirloom furniture or something and go carve into it the first time, right? Go get you some scrap that you're planning on using, and go run it and make some things that you plan on throwing away, right? Or hey, if you get one that looks good, keep it, right? Or save it and say, hey, here's my first cut, and then 6 weeks into it, here's what I'm doing now.
Okay.
But that's
Yeah.
one I've played with it a good bit, and finding that right setting means a lot. And then once it's done, right, you can save that file. I've got one of those hanging on my wall for 1/8" birch, where hey, I've got my cut settings for cutting it clean. I've got the grid for the engraving, right? But then I've got my my optimal speed, the font I use, and for actually like drawing letters, right, rather than cutting them out, because I want to draw it as a line, so I use a single line font, but I don't want to burn all the way through. So that's completely different than my cut setting or my engraved setting, and wrote all that. So I've got that hanging on the wall right there next to the laser as an example, right? And if you do that with each piece of material as you dial them in, there's no doubt, if I'm cutting 1/8" Baltic birch, here's my settings, and they give great results. And now I just need to do that for multiple different thicknesses, and then as I get into other woods and acrylics and things, and then play with your material libraries in there. I don't know if you've downloaded the preset ones there. So you've got the preset libraries for your machine. You can get those loaded in there. There's also a PDF that differs from the libraries that you load in there. And then what you'll find is maybe that's not the exact setting you're looking for. Maybe you want something a little bit darker, a little bit lighter. So if you can use those libraries there as a starting point, and then you can go in and dial in your settings from there. And then you can manually save your own library back in there as Jen's 1/8" plywood setting, or hey, cutting with this but engraving with this, or drawing lines with this but not cutting it.
Sure.
And I did fix, I think, this file that I'd been fighting with, and the reason for this big disclaimer at the top. I would set the minimum power to 0, and it never would keep it. It would always put it back to 100. So I made the power 1, and it seems to be sticking. So I don't think you'll have to go in if you do download this one. I think it'll function properly for you now. It'll be a scale of 1% to 100%, but I don't think that's too big of a deal. We could try 0.1 if you wanted, but I think it should be fine. But hopefully it'll behave. And then there's that resource. I think that at the bottom, I probably should make it a little bigger, but this is that really cool site. And I think Jeremy generates his stuff, but it's more, there's basic power and speed, advanced power and speed, and then there's engrave, and you can show an eyeball. You can change that from a gradient to a square to an eyeball, but there's a couple cool things about kerf tests, and then showing about your line interval, depending on how you're focused. And this is a really cool thing. So.
And one thing that you'll notice in the advanced power and speed, notice how it's not just a block. It takes some curves, it takes some sharp bits. To your point, Glenn, when you're talking about cutting out the things, there is so the capability of your machine, right? Your x-axis is slower in terms of capability than what your y-axis is, because you have a lot more mass to move, right? So your y can move a lot faster physically than what your x can. So when you start going into settings and you go pushing them, you say, well, you could go do this, but you notice on your X, when it goes to move, right, you might get a slightly different result when you're cutting larger things. Or hey, maybe when the X is cutting, it cuts clear, but when the Y goes, because the Y has time to fully accelerate and slow back down, it moves too fast.
Okay.
That's one thing to keep in mind. I noticed a few times when I was pushing the speed portion of it on the Y, the X would consistently cut through, but the Y would have some gaps on some of the longer ones where I was, wasn't quite cutting all the way through. And, after I realized, sometimes the material wasn't 100% perfectly flat, which affected the focus in some points. And then I cut out enough of the little honeycomb clips and made sure it was flat. I had one in just about every hole in the bed, made sure, and started playing. As you get to that threshold, right, you push it to your fastest, right, and to where it starts to just kind of become inconsistent, have a few misses, and then back it off just a little bit, and it was fine.
Okay.
So, and it is a lot of rabbit holes. Like ply is notoriously hard to cut because of the glue pockets and air voids, and there's probably knots in the center because the center doesn't matter, aesthetically. So there's all kinds of stuff you fight from, for that. But there's always some dialing in to do.
And that's one. The more plies that you have, the harder, right? Because if you have more plies, that means you have more glue layers and glue lines in between them. So Baltic birch, which is your best quality ply, your best grade of ply normally, it's a lot flatter, a lot more stable, but it's because it has more layers. Right? It's got a lot of thin hardwood layers glued with alternating grain patterns, so it keeps it nice and stable and flat. But at the same time, right, I can go cut through 3/4 inch regular birch ply. That's fine. Baltic birch, I can't reliably cut through, and I've got a 51 130 watt. Even at 0.5 millimeter a second at 100% power, it'll punch through, but it's burning through. It's not actually cutting through. It's that's down to how many plies. There's 13 plies in a piece of 3/4 inch Baltic birch, and that's whereas if you went and bought like a regular Home Depot birch plywood, it might be 5 or 7.
So, all right. Chris had asked a question. I think he's still on here. Chris, do you want to, are you able to get audio, or were you chatting to, there you go.
Well, no, it's, my main question was, if you have a setting that you always use that's good for a particular thing, and you always use it, how often do you need to readjust it? So I'm not making anything. I'm actually, I bought it.
Yeah, so you're talking for your labels, right, Chris?
Right, for the labels.
Yep.
I mean,
yep. So if you're going to do that,
and it's like, okay, I found my setting. This is good. I don't want to screw with it anymore. This is what I use.
Yep. So you'd save that as a preset setting there, Chris, in your libraries is what I do. I'd go save it. Let's say I'm cutting, it's a red with white backing phenolic tag, and I'm cutting them at this size, this speed, right? Go save that, very descriptive in your library. That way you can easily call it back up. Don't change it unless your result isn't the same, right?
Yeah, how often
there will be
have to happen though? I mean,
so the things that are going to affect your result is one is if for some reason you're out of focus, right? So if you've got warped material or you didn't focus it right, if you get dirt on dirty optics, so you get smoke on either your mirrors, your lens, or anything that's impeding your beam path, if for some reason you get out of alignment, right, or anything that's going to adjust your beam quality, you get a bunch of soot built up on the edge of your nozzle, right, and you're blocking part of your beam path. And then longer term, as the machine degrades, right, your tube life will, it's got a fixed life of 2,000 to 4,000 hours, is the estimate, right? But as your tube degrades, it will take more power to get the same result, right? So
So,
on hour number 1, you might need 30% power to perform a task, and hour number 4,000, you might need 60% power to perform the same task.
all
But
right.
that's going to be long-term use. That's not going to be adjusted every week, right? That's going to be adjusted in a year from now, depending on how much you use it, right? But you'll see the degradation. It's not gonna change over time, or it's not gonna change drastically unless something is wrong, right? So as long as you're cleaning your mirrors and your lens, right? I do it every day when I first start up, right? I will clean them, and depending on what I'm cutting and how dirty and nasty it is, or every time I'm using the HR lens, just because of its design and the proximity of how close it is to material, it tends to get real dirty real quick.
Got it. I just want to make sure I cut 20 labels out. Will the next 20, will I have to sit there and watch it type thing? And
once you get your settings right, it should be good there, as long as you're doing your keeping it clean, and you've not, like I said, you've not degraded anything. Yeah. Now, lenses, mirrors do have life as well, right? Over time they will degrade. And
got it. How often? So, is there, say you don't have a job to do right away, so you just have to sit there and wait for it. Is there, like, you should run the is there, like, go get like a nice little piece of cardboard or thick cardboard or whatever, and should you run it daily or weekly? Because it could go, or what?
I run my machine. I've maybe run my machine an hour, maybe this whole month. And my other machine, I've probably fired it once, and I've had it for 6 months or longer, and I've probably fired it one time. So I don't get a lot of time to fire mine. If you're asking if you have to run it regularly to keep it tuned up or warmed up or something like that, no, not really.
Now that's a problem you have when you buy a boat. Right, you have to run it regularly, or it costs money.
Now, if you let the water sit in the chiller for a couple of months and it's never been agitated or circulated, you can get algae growth and things like that. If it sits in there and it freezes, of course, you can bust a tube or something like that, if you're not using the machine regularly. But as far as, being a detriment to its lifespan just by not using it very often, that's not a concern typically, if that's kind of what you're after.
Yeah, that's what I was going for, is just like, all right, I didn't use it for the week. Is it? Yeah. It's kind of like your inkjet printer or whatever, or
right. Yeah, you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff with this. It can sit. Mine sits more than it runs. Like I said, that it boggles my mind too, because I need to be running these things. I enjoy it. And I'm starting more. I'm still wanting to learn how to do photos better. So, but I don't run mine as much as I should.
So on photos, Brian, I've done, very little with my machine, but I started playing with photos and managed to get really good results fairly easily. I don't know what you're doing, if you're going full on Photoshop and processing and what you're trying to etch them into, but
yeah, well, I like doing acrylics, edge lit acrylic, doing photos in that, dogs and babies and stuff like that, for the family and stuff. And I can do decent with the 2-inch even, but I've got the HR head I want to start playing with, but I got anodized aluminum cards that I want to do some LPI tests on and stuff like that, and look at it under the scope, and just see how far I can push the envelope. I've been cheating and using Photograph or whatever. I've been using Imager too, that online deal that guy's been developing.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was able to get some good results with Imager. Right, a couple of things I learned along the way. Right, is the quality of your photo matters, right? So if you take it on a nice brand new iPhone with phenomenal photo quality and you upload it to Facebook and then you save it back, Facebook compresses it and downgrades the image quality, right? So you're not going to get the results. Somebody can't share it with you via text message or in a compressed means. So you need to go look at the size of the photo, right? If it's 50 kilobytes, it's not going to engrave real well, right? But if you've got a 5 meg photo, there's a good chance that there's sufficient resolution there to engrave it, right? And then in Imager, right, I got to playing around in it, watched a few videos, right, but found something that worked across a number of different photos with some pretty simplistic settings, right? You go in and crop it to whatever size you wanted, but yeah, we can walk through it right now if you want. I was going to write it down so I didn't forget it, or I could share it with people, but we can go through it right now. Image hyphen
Are you
R.
going to share? You want to share your screen? Would that be easier? Or are you on?
No, you go ahead here. I'm not exactly sure what I'm allowed to share or not. I'm on a work computer right now with a bunch of other stuff open. So, yeah. So if you go there and you upload your photo, all right. So,
I don't know if I should. Let me get this off screen here. I don't know what I got here.
Yeah.
I might have some secrets. Let me find a decent picture. I'm not really sure what I got here.
Can't tell anyone that the fiber's going to go on sale Monday morning, huh?
Right.
Yeah. I
gotta
wish you
save
could tell
a
us
spot
that
for myself.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a horrible thing for. Oh man, what is that? Okay, so is that an ad? Let's see.
There's ads. Yeah, that's the one thing I'm considering paying for it, just to find his ads tend to hide the functionality. Yeah, but it's good that it's free too.
I thought I hit upload. There it goes. Now it's working. And we'll just go over to pictures. More of a person, maybe? Does it matter?
Yeah, so I don't know. I was doing, decent, high resolution actual photos of my kids.
Well, here's a photo of an air compressor.
There you go. That'll work.
That's terrible. It's a terrible example. This is what happens when I get put on the spot.
Yeah, and that's fine. If you want, we could set this up for next week because I'm off to drop for another call here in 4 minutes.
Yeah, and I'm going to be off in 4 minutes too. Why don't we have a look at this next time? We'll just do a little thing on it. That'd be cool.
We'll do a quick walkthrough on it. Yeah, I might even prepare.
Sounds
do some homework.
Well, you're doing a pretty good job at winging it. I'm gonna have to get you a tool bag if you keep that stuff up.
Yeah, so. I got you.
So, yeah. I'm surprised Chris wasn't
test
on here.
file there. Yeah, you're going to have to get you have to get you a better sidekick, huh?
Oh, he's a good sidekick. He's a good sidekick, and it helps that I have all you guys to help along too. That helps more than you know. So just the whole community is great. So that's one of the best things. So
what did Glenn do?
What's that?
What did Glenn do? He just cut something, burned something. What?
I just put that Lightburn file that he was showing in Lightburn and just ran it real quick to see what happened, and didn't cut out anything, but I did it super quick. I didn't really read any of the stuff in the.
Oh, that's all right. Nobody else
does follow the instructions. That's the problem.
I thought I'd try it real quick to see what came out.
So cool. Well, all right, guys. We got about 2 minutes left, but I think I'm going to kick it off and get ready for my next appointment. I got one more this afternoon, then I can call it quits for a little while, maybe. Well, for a couple hours. I don't think I ever sleep. So, all right, guys. Well, does anybody have anything else before we go? Any last minute questions or anything? All right. Well, I guess I'll see you guys next week. Oh, go ahead, Jen.
Take care. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're most welcome. We'll see you guys later.
All right, talk to you next week.
Okay.
See you later, Brian.
Bye-bye.